Okay, cool. So we'll get started. Welcome. We have a little more leg room tonight, which is a good thing, because the people last night smelled weird, and so this is good. Okay. Anyway, welcome to 1,000 Bells, and to you out there. We're also live streaming, so don't say anything bad about anybody.
It's too late now.
So,
Yeah.
well, you've done what you've done. Then make your bed. So I'm gonna introduce. This is Christian Stringham over here. He's going to be doing all the music. He also happens to be my cousin and a really groovy dude. Up front, we've got Callie Scott. She's done all the illustrations for this and is a dear, dear friend of mine. So without further ado, let's get started. A thousand bells, ringing, forming the sound of a harp string uncoiling against the cold metal plate of your face, light like ice and milk, scrap metal, dusk, dandelion hair. I am seeing things now. Finally, I am seeing things deep underground, qualities, objects deep underground where the wells are. I am on a hill, looking down at the valley below. It is only one spot, only one space, only one stain among many stains, and behind me, beyond me, on either side, yes, on all sides, yes, on every side, there are many places we have yet to make. 1,000 bells ringing like light, like ice and milk, making streams of coral gray, like light, like ice and milk, uncoiling cold atmosphere and poppies like light, like ice and milk. The bowstring exhales, the bull's horns are rose and gold, and up in the attic, up in the little attic of an old heart, something stirs at the smell of oatmeal prepared by your delicate hands 40 years from now. And I remember now I remember now how I laid there paralyzed as the sun had coffee with the walls of our apartment, and you breathed heavy on my chest. Bliss, kisses, butterfly tummies, and an almost moon. There's a space devoid of purpose. There's a posture greater than our God. Milk, ice, metal, dusk, dandelion hair. 1,000 bells ringing, forming the sound of a harp string uncoiling against the cold metal plate of your face. This one's called Tunnel. There was once a boy and a girl who were driving across the country. They were driving across the country because they were coming home from vacation. They were on vacation in a place they had once lived. They were on vacation in a place they had once lived because when they had lived there, they had loved each other very much. Now they loved each other not so much. And so they thought if they were in this place where they had once lived, where they loved each other very much, maybe they would love each other again now, very much. The boy was the way you might imagine a boy might look. He did not have many frills or thrilling features, but he was kind and took care and always made sure that things were in order to make the girl happy. He had brown hair, he had brown eyes, he had brown shoes, he had nice thighs. He had a good shirt, he had good jeans, he had no piercings, he had no wings. The girl was the way you might imagine a girl. She had some frills and one or two thrilling features, and she was somewhat kind and took care of things you could touch, and made sure that the boy did not do something stupid to get himself killed. She had brown hair, she had gray eyes, she had sandals on, she liked to get high, she had her shit together, she had good jeans, she had pierced ears, she had turquoise rings. There they were, driving together through the desert after their vacation to the place they had once lived. They had gone, they had seen it. They were not in love again now very much. It was late afternoon, and they were listening to music. Their backs hurt, especially the girl's. She had been driving a long time, but she didn't mind so much because she liked to drive. She was thinking about all the stupid things the boy had done to piss her off. She was thinking about how fucking stupid he was sometimes, most of the time. She was thinking about how he didn't know how to do anything useful, and about how he was terrible company. It was late in the afternoon, and they were listening to music. Their backs hurt, especially the boys. He had been slumped over for a long time, but he didn't mind so much because he didn't like to drive. He was thinking about how rude the girl had been to him about silly things, He was thinking about how fucking petty she was sometimes, most of the time. He was thinking about how she didn't care about anything important and about how she didn't want him around. There they were, driving together through the desert after stopping at the gas station to get something to snack on. It was early evening and they were listening to podcasts. Their heads hurt, especially the girls. She had been settling for the boy for a long time, but she didn't mind so much because she liked him. She was thinking about all the nice things the boy had done for her. She was thinking about how selfless he was sometimes, most of the time. She was thinking about how he knew how to take care of someone's heart and how he kept her company when she cried. It was early evening, and they were listening to podcasts. Their heads hurt, especially the boys. He had been bullied by the girl for a long time, but he didn't mind so much because he liked her. He was thinking about all the important things the girl looked after. He was thinking about how pragmatic she was. He was thinking about how brave she was sometimes, most of the time. He was thinking about how she knew how to make it day by day, and about the time she had told him she didn't know what she'd do without him. And then suddenly they weren't thinking anymore because they were fighting. It was a matter about what? A sigh maybe, a missed turn, a joke, a wrong look, but they were in it. And it lasted many miles. And as any good fight does, it turned from being about one thing to being about everything, anything. There they were, driving through the desert after their fight. It was nighttime, and they were silent. They did not talk. There was nothing on. The desert had transformed itself into a weightless black sheet, free of form and the constraints of physical existence. There was nothing to be seen but the headlights of semis. They appeared first like itty-bitty fireflies in the distance, then grew to monstrous floods of light as they came to face the car head-on, and then suddenly disappeared. Black as black could be, they drove. Their own lights carved small slots in the thick black of the desert, allowing them to see a few feet in front of them. But soon, the road had vanished from underneath them, and they were lifted into a blackness so dense that their headlights had no effect. They could not see anything. They could not feel the car around them. And in fact, the girl had stopped driving altogether. They sat there in complete darkness in the tunnel between what exists and what does not exist, suspended as it seemed by some unknowable force which felt to them like a lukewarm ocean. They sat there for what seemed like hours, unable to think, unable to speak. All they could do was wade in the unknowable blackness of this tunnel, this thing that had swallowed them up whole. And then it happened. It rose, and they could not imagine that it was what it was supposed to be. It shed its piercing light across the desert, dropping in lines and shapes and dimensions and giving form to what was once formless. Their eyes were transfixed, and they pointed and shouted at the great green, yellow, gray as it blossomed in the sky, their lips and tongues moving frantically, their limbs flailing as they craned their necks upward and signaled for each other to look, but not a single sound was made. Was it a UFO? Was it the light from the world's largest gas station? Was it the gaping eye of a god neither of them believed in? Was it the light at the end of a lukewarm tunnel? It was the moon. The thankless moon who nightly donned its robe, stepped out onto the balcony of space and shone down on the small plebeians of this world. The moon who was divorced from Earth when the planet Theia threw itself between them, but who still lit its old lover in a wash of pink-white light and made the oceans dance. The moon. Steady, constant, reappearing. The moon. The road appeared before them again. The girl took up the wheel, and they said nothing as they drove the next 100 miles to where they would stay the night, a small hotel in a smaller town. They brought their things into the room and sat on the bed. She said she was hungry. He said he would go get her something to eat. She said, "I love you." He said, "I love you too." Then he drove down the street to the Mexican place that was open all night, the one with the neon sign. He got the food and headed back, knowing that his toiletries would be set out on the counter and that she would have arranged his pillows just the way he liked them. Angel. In response to the protests over the recent use of deadly force by a Kentucky County police officer, our department has decided to share a detailed report with the public in hopes of quelling suspicion and building trust. The police report filed on the same day as the incident reads as follows. On September 21st, 2016, at approximately 16:35, two officers were dispatched to 1679 Inkvine Avenue regarding a suspicious vehicle report. Upon arriving at the scene, officers pulled behind the vehicle, a silver 2001 Chevrolet Malibu, and exited their squad car. Upon doing so, the officers noted that the vehicle in question was occupied by an adult male and a female child. The officers saw what they believed to be a firearm in the man's hand. At this point, the officers decided to engage with the suspect. As they approached the vehicle, they loudly and clearly identified themselves. As they drew closer, the suspect exited the vehicle with his hands raised in an aggressive fashion. He was still holding what appeared to be a gun. They insisted that the suspect re-enter his vehicle, but he did not comply. Officers then drew their weapons and again repeated their command. At this point, the child called out to the man and attempted to exit the car. Officer 1 then rushed to the child's door and held it shut to keep her from danger. The suspect then turned to face Officer 1, who was holding the door, and spoke to him in an aggressive and threatening tone while waving the object in his hands wildly in the air. Sensing that his partner was in danger, the other officer opened fire on the suspect, firing a total of 2 shots, which hit the suspect in the back just below his shoulder blades. The second bullet, which exited just below the suspect's heart, ricocheted off the metal seat adjuster of the vehicle and skimmed the child's arm, leaving a small wound. The suspect fell to the ground, and Officer 2 began to handcuff him. The child then climbed over the passenger's side seat and threw herself onto the suspect, weeping into the man's wounds. Officer 2 attempted to restrain the child, but as the child's tears mixed with the man's blood, a shock wave sent both officers flying. Officer 1 hit a tree and instantly became unconscious. Officer 2 was slammed up against the squad car and became momentarily paralyzed. Fine, white feathers then began to sprout from the suspect's wounds, and a wonderful warm light enveloped him and the child. Soon the man had sprouted enormous wings from where the bullets had entered his body. As he levitated to his feet, he picked up the child and held her in his hands. He then turned to Officer 2, and in a voice like seawater and pewter spoke the following. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they that are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye, when men shall revile you and persecute you, and should say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. The suspect then outstretched his wings and lifted his head toward the sky, which was taken as a sign of aggression. Officer 2 recovered his weapon, which had been knocked aside, and fired several shots at the suspect, but the bullets turned to bubbles as they entered the suspect's vicinity and landed on the child's nose, which made her giggle. The suspect then literally took flight and disappeared into the sky. Medical assistance was called, and the officers were both taken to the hospital for screening. Goose. I drove up the gate, where a man inside a small booth buzzed me in. After that, I still had a few miles to go, but I could see the clubhouse up on the hill, lit by the haze of the chandeliers and champagne glasses that resided within. I had broken into a terrible sweat many miles before, but luckily I had had the good sense to stop off at a gas station and use the paper towels in the men's restroom to dry my armpits and to splash cold water on my face. For the time, I seemed to be all right. I had borrowed Amos's suit because I didn't have one of my own. It was a bit too small for me, but his wife assured me that a tight fit was all the rage, at least currently. I provided the bow tie myself, which I had read online was the thing to wear. It was a wonderful forest green, and a very helpful salesman helped me pick it out from the retailers. He said I looked fabulous. At any rate, I felt rather confident as I had made all the necessary provisions. My hair was cut, high and tight with length left at the top. I had the suit, black as black could be. I had the cologne, very musty. I had the watch. It didn't work, but it looked nice enough, and I figured no one would notice. I had the shoes, my father's, which he had won in a cockfight. Yes, I was certainly set, and as I approached the valet for the clubhouse, I felt in myself a certain something I had never felt before, a swagger. Yes, a sense that my genitals were of special consequence, and my shoulders and chest appeared to also be aware of their great worth. I billowed out of the car, glanced at the valet, and nearly said, "Don't scratch it." But I could never say anything like that, even with my then important genitals. Then I embarked across the walkway and up to the front entrance where, in my rapturous masculinity, I burst open both doors and stomped onto the dance floor, chest puffed out, waiting for a fight. Instantly I regretted my decision. All heads were turned in my direction. All eyes were on me, some couples even going so far as to stop dancing to get a better look. I went limper than a boiled noodle. I tried to shake the whole thing off. After all, it wasn't that bad a gaffe, was it? I looked around to find Edwina, but she was already darting across the floor to meet me. As we met, I went for a kiss, but she was already at my side, wrapping her arm around mine and digging her nails in deep, all the while keeping a relaxed grin on her face. She escorted me across the room where I was introduced to the couple she was having a discussion with before I came in. But before I got beyond, "It's a pleasure to meet you both," she had already excused us and we were headed to the bar for drinks. We picked up our drinks, champagne, and after I tipped the bartender, she whisked me away yet again to the patio, where I knew all too well what would come. The second we passed through the door, she was upon me. She pulled her arm off mine as if it were a hot stove and turned in a fury to issue her attack. Her eyes were cold and liquid. Her face was placid and relaxed except for her lips, which were turned slightly downward, forming the scowl I knew all too well. Her shoulders and chest were supremely relaxed, but her weight was shifted onto her right leg, and her hand rested tightly on her hip. She stood there, saying nothing, waiting for me to explain myself, but I wouldn't have it this time. After a good minute of silence, she raised her eyebrows to order me to speak, but I wouldn't have it this time. She began, "What the fuck are you wearing?" It was not a question. She went on, "Didn't I tell you we should have gone shopping together? And what were you thinking just clomping in here like some fucking clown? Don't you know these people are my friends?" Her face was twisting up, her shoulders raised as her breath turned shallow. She waited again for me to speak, but I wouldn't have it this time. "You embarrassed me," she spit out. A couple passed by the doorway, and she turned again to light and gave them a warm smile as she touched my arm. They smiled back and then faded from view. She turned back to ice and waited. "You really frustrate me sometimes, Johnny." I knew the speech well. "You don't think about anything. If you would just consider something for a second, how different would your life be? How hard would it have been to just open the door like a normal person? It's like you don't even live on this planet. It's like you don't know how to do anything. Like, do you even think about what you're going to do, or do you just go about your day being putty?" Silence. She wanted a response. I felt my chest start to burn, and my knees quivered, and my fists clenched, and worst of all, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I knew I shouldn't cry, but there was nothing to be done, and they began to slowly seep out. I looked down, but there was no hiding it. "Jesus," she spat. "Are you serious? Why do you have to be so dramatic?" "I'm sorry," I said, "because I would have it this time. Just like the last time. Because I loved her. Just come back in when you get it together." And with that, she waltzed back into the party as if it had never happened, waving to someone across the room. I broke down. I sat on the ground and wept huge, galloping sobs for a good long while. As I was settling down, I heard in the distance a goose quacking. It was coming from the clubhouse pond, a ways off. I was not bothered by it at first, but then it began to sound like laughter. Yes, it seemed that this goose had heard my bellowing and found it quite comic. I got up and peered out over the edge of the patio to the pond, where I made out the shape of a goose, who had her head thrown back and what I was quite sure was her wing pointed toward me, as if to mock me. I was enraged. Who did this goose think she was? My fist clenched as the heat rose to my forehead. I leapt off the patio onto the grass below and ran toward the pond. As I approached, it became clear that what I had saw was indeed correct. There was the goose, rolling about in the water with rapturous glee, her wing outstretched, laughing ever harder as I approached. I increased my speed and raised my hand, ready to strike. I met the edge of the pond, but I did not stop. I waded in and clocked the goose clean in her bill, then wrapped my hands around her slender neck and began to suffocate her. She stopped her chortling and let out in a short gasp, "Please, I'm only a goose." I realized she was right and let go of my grip. I waded back to the edge of the pond in a daze and sat down at the water's edge, my head in my lap. The goose then approached and put her wing around me. "I'm only laughing, friend, because I was just like you. I did not respond. She went on. I used to place my love like you do, only in others. I depended on what they thought of me. I depended on their praise and admiration. Do you see this pink feather here? She brandished her backside toward me and revealed a feather that was indeed intensely pink and looked enormously out of place next to the brown-gray of the rest of her body. I loved it when I was younger, but as I grew up, I became ashamed of it because the others thought it was ugly and strange. How silly that I would let them change my mind. Now I like it again. I was silent. Tears began to roll down my face. She didn't like your bow tie, she said. I nodded a bit. I like it quite a bit, she remarked sincerely. Thank you, I replied. But it doesn't much matter what I think, does it? Do you like it? I do, I sputtered. I picked it out myself. Well, the salesman helped me, but I mostly picked it out myself. And I like green. It reminds me of pine trees and of a turtleneck my grandfather used to wear, and I like both of those things because they make me feel safe. You look smashing, the goose replied. Then we sat there for a long while, her wing around me, peering into the pond where the reflection of the moon could be seen. Beauteous, vivid. I didn't even get a chance to dance, I said. I have an idea, she said, and took me by the hand and led me up the lawn back toward the clubhouse. We were moving toward the entrance, and I became anxious. I can't go back in there. Yes, you can, she whispered as she gently slapped my ass with her wing. She then burst wide the double doors and let out a great quack. There we were, standing in front of everyone who had stopped their drinking and their dancing and their schmoozing to look directly at this goose and her goof. I stole a glance at Edwina, who, by the looks of it, had nearly shat herself there on the dance floor. The goose then rested her wings on my shoulders, her legs propped up against my pelvis. We danced the tango with great expertise. Of course, the orchestra had stopped playing altogether, what with a man showing up with the goose. But she quacked out a fine tune, which we danced to with supreme style and excellent timing. By the end, the audience was stunned. They had no idea what to do but stand still and not say anything. We then walked right past Edwina to the bar where we took 4 bottles of champagne, crossed the floor again to the entrance, and slammed the door behind us, the goose leaving the crowd with a well-deserved peace, bitches. I then slapped the valet across the face, gave him a $200 tip, and told him to hurry up with the damn car, which he did. The goose and I then picked up several menu items from a nearby burger shack and headed to the drive-in movies. They were playing Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which we heckled, much to the dismay of many teenagers and adults who might have been teenagers. We finished the champagne and the food, then curled up in the back of the car with blankets I always kept on hand. When I pulled them out while I was folding down the seats, the goose remarked, "You're one smart cookie," which felt very nice. But what was even better was that just moments before I had said the very same thing to myself in my head. We fell asleep with the cell phone buzzing in the background from Edwina's incessant calls. Shooter. The Performance Center ported M&P 9 Shield is a 9mm caliber handgun. It has a striker fire action and uses a 7-round clip, 8 if you prefer. The grip is polymer and it weighs 18.2 ounces. The police escort met her at the house early that morning and drove with her to the funeral home. She was still thinking about the note she had stepped on her way out the door a few mornings earlier. It read, "If you put him in the ground there, we will dig him up." It was written in blood, probably a pig's. If you keep a bullet in the chamber and load a 7-round clip, you have 8 shots. If you also carry the other 7-round clip that comes with the gun, you have 15 shots. Good bullets to use are Remington Golden Saber 24-grain jacket hollow points. They're well designed. At least that's what the old cowboy-looking guy on the YouTube video said. As the coffin was loaded into the hearse, one of the officers explained how the caravan would work. There would be a police car in front of the hearse and 2 behind. She was to ride in the front car. He also explained that there would be added security at the gravesite and that they were expecting protesters. You can get your shots off fairly quickly as the pistol is semi-automatic. I learned that the difference between a semi-automatic and a fully automatic weapon is that a fully automatic weapon keeps firing as long as you're holding down the trigger, but a semi-automatic only reloads automatically, and and then you have to pull the trigger each time you want to shoot. As they were driving down the street leading up to the graveyard, they heard several loud thuds. She screamed, and the officer pushed her down and turned back wildly to see what had happened. "Just some eggs," the radio sputtered. The officer returned to driving, and she looked back at the hearse, which was now covered in thick, running yolk. I'm a pretty regular guy, I guess. I like video games, and I'm really into hip-hop. I got a lot of zits, which I don't really like. I've got long hair, and I dress pretty normal, just like a t-shirt and jeans mostly. I've got some friends, but they mostly suck. I like hanging out with my mom, though. As they entered the cemetery, there was a horde at the gates. Officers were pushing them back to clear the road, but they were hungry to hurt her, and shouted as the procession passed. Some held signs. She tried not to look at them, but caught sight of one with a large picture of Frederick, the one who had lived. It was the photo that had been so popular on the internet, the one of him in the hospital, with his jaw barely hanging on. My classroom is laid out as follows. As you come through the door, the teacher's desk is on the right in the far corner. That's where Miss Caudry sits before class begins. On the left are the tables where we sit. There are 2 rows with 3 tables in each row, and 4 people sit at each table. My table is the middle table in the second row. Lindsay's table is the furthest table from the door in the front row. She's my crush, but she doesn't know. There's a door in the back of class, but it's always locked, and the windows are real hard to open, so that's good. Finally, they arrived at the gravesite, where the priest was waiting for them. He embraced her as she exited the car. Officers were surrounding the gravesite, keeping a watchful eye. "Why didn't I just take him somewhere else?" she asked. "This is his home, Kathleen," the priest replied. "No one wants him here. They'll dig him up." Several officers helped pull the coffin from the hearse and place it next to the grave. I kept it in my closet. Once I had got real angry and punched the wall in there, and it left this hole. The thing was, I found out I could reach in and rest things on a board that was in there. My mom never knew because I covered the hole with one of my posters, and she was off getting groceries when I had punched it. And I told her that my knuckles were bruised because someone had dared me to punch a ham sandwich at school, and it had been one of those really hard lunch tables, and I punched down right onto it. She laughed, but then made me promise it hadn't been in a fight, so I did. The priest began his speech. It was not very long, and the mother wasn't listening anyway. She just stood there all alone, not a soul to help her or hold her. She looked up at the sky. It was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, and the sky was blue. I walked in 5 minutes late like I always did, so nobody looked up. I was nervous and my hands were shaking. I stood in the doorway for a long time, and that's when people noticed me. I was so sweaty and my stomach was all knotted up. Miss Caudry finally looked up. "Is everything all right?" I took the gun out of the inside pocket of my jacket. I kept it there because I'd seen a guy keep it there in a movie. I went into the firing stance the old cowboy guy told me how to do on YouTube. And then I shot. And then I shot again. And then I turned toward the tables and shot. Then I shot again and shot again. Then I shot again and again and again. Then I had to reload. Then I shot underneath the tables once, then again and again and once more. Then I walked over to Frederick and shot twice. Then I put the gun up to my head, and I felt real sick, so I threw up. But then I shot again. The officers had gotten the ropes out to lower the casket. She was starting to cry. The priest came and put his arm around her. As the officers lowered the casket, a sea of people appeared on the horizon. The officers at the perimeter stood ready, their hands tingling, ready to grab their weapons. The mother's eyes opened wide in horror, her mouth agape. Surely this was the mob come to interrupt her son's funeral. They did not want him here. They would dig him up. They would tear him limb from limb. They would burn him. But instead of the angry cries they all anticipated, they heard the buzz of a familiar tune, a song which was known well in the town. It was a song that was sung at all the churches, all the synagogues, all the mosques, and even in the bars, which we all know are the churches of the godless. It was a song of forgiveness. It was a song which did not belong to any religion in particular, but nonetheless was reserved for occasions of transcendence, moments when the earth felt as if it might fall away from our feet, moments when the light seemed to have the quality of weight. As the mother heard this song, she fell to her knees. The crowd moved closer, and the tune became clearer and more piercing. They formed a crescent around the grave, and their singing came to a close. They stood there with sad smiles on their faces, their feet firmly planted, and their kindnesses outstretched. The officers lowered the shooter into the ground. After the mother threw the first bit of dirt onto the grave, the chorus started up again. Tear what you will, but we will not be overcome. Ours is the glory of holding our neighbor's hands in ours. Do not fear. Courage is with you now. Do not weep. Now comes the grace of peace. For long forgotten hours we have struggled, we have slaved to give ourselves the gift of giving that weight away. Goodbye, hate. Farewell and nevermore. Goodbye, venom that lived within my soul. Tear what you will, but we will not be overcome. Ours is the glory of holding our neighbor's hands in ours. Do not fear. Courage is with you now. Do not weep. Now comes the grace of peace. Message. Hey Johnny, just calling to say hey, I guess. It's been a while. I've just been thinking about you a lot. Yeah. I'm wondering how you've been. I saw online that you went on that trip. It looked like fun, man. I saw you still got that awful green jacket Molly bought you. She's doing well. Misses you tons. I've been doing pretty well, just sort of picking away. Nothing too exciting, but working on the dream. Yeah. Planning things out. Putting in the groundwork. I hope you're good, man. I'd love to talk to you sometime soon. I know you're busy. I know the time difference is weird, too. I'm actually heading to lunch now. You're probably coming home from the bars or something. I saw you're seeing that girl. What's her name? Anyway, she seems super nice, as far as I can tell from pictures. Anyway, yeah, I hope things are good, and I guess that's all I wanted to say. Yeah, I hope things are alright. So, okay, so I do have to ask you something. I know maybe you don't want to call me back, and I get that, but I've been thinking about what you said to me on the way to the airport. I mean, you said a lot of things, and I did too. I didn't mean, like that, but I've been wondering about this one thing in particular, and I haven't stopped thinking about it, really. You said that I would never be anything, but not that part, the thing you said after. You said it wasn't because I wasn't good enough. You said it was because I didn't want to be anything, and I can't get that out of my head. Every time I'm going to bed or I'm changing the washer or I'm walking to work, I hear you saying that, and I know I should be better and not care about shit like that. I know that I should think that I'm great and that I do want things, but I think you might be right. Because looking back at it, I think it's true, even right now, and I guess that scares me. I don't really think I want anything because I'd have to work for it, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to work for anything. I don't want to do anything. And you probably heard from Mom that I'm doing really well, that I'm working out, and that I've got these new friends, and that work is going really well, and that's true, but I'm not happy. I'm not even like normal happy. I'm just shitty. I felt worse, in fact. I felt better when I was sitting around eating whole pizzas and getting blackout. So I'm just broken, I think, but I didn't call to talk about me, really. I didn't. The reason I think about it so much, and the reason it scared me so fucking bad, is because no one else saw that in me, and you did. You saw it, and that makes me think that you must know what it's like. You know what it is because you're the same way. And I was looking at pictures of that trip, and it just sent me over the edge because I saw you smiling and having a great time, and you got that girl, and you're drinking, and you're having a blast. But I know those are the times that I've been closest to jumping off a cliff or taking a bunch of pills or some stupid shit like that, and I need you to know that I love you. I love you, and you aren't going to be nothing. And I'm sorry that we fought right before you left, and I'm sorry we haven't talked. And I need you to know that you can't kill yourself for something stupid like that, because it's going to be okay. And I know it's shitty, and I'm not okay either, but it's going to be okay. And I don't really think that what we're dealing with is something you fix. I just think you deal with it, you know, but there's so much to keep going for. Like yesterday I saw a dog fall over, and last week I went to the symphony, and old people will just like tell you stories if you go talk to them. But just, I love you, Johnny. So hang in there, and I will too. Okay, I gotta go to lunch now. I love you. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up for me. What I've done each night is have audience members come up and tell the ending story, and my good buddy Nick Ramos has something, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, great. So, and these guys will accompany you. If you have a title, she'll write it for you even. I'm going to come steal your seat.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
Great.
get up there. All right.
Hang on one moment. It's just in here. It's written in this book. Hang on. Here it is. I just wrote myself a note. Do not go in there unprepared. Make sure you have some notes. Love, Nick Ramos. So man, took care of that. Alright guys. Now I'm going to use my technology, because this is where I actually keep my poetry. This book is just full of... this book was given to me by it was bought for me by a girl who, her name, I don't need to tell you, but she's the kind of girl who'd buy me this book to write in. And it's happened to me before with another girl, but that's beside the point. This is my poem here. If you want to write there, the title, Nick Ramos.
Okay, will do.
Perfect. Great, I'm glad you know how to spell it. Alright. A rap to map the inside of my perverted mind. My innocence was stolen before I could even look behind. Back before memories, so all that was ingrained in me was sex. So ultimately something I knew before they taught me. My attacker, he had got me, told me I would be okay. That odd feeling in my gut was good, and it would go away. Well, that shit is still right here today. But I don't mind it anyway. But it did a number on my brain. Respond to a Craigslist ad. Wanna fuck? Yeah, it sounds bad. I sent a ton. While lying right next to my number one. What was I thinking? To think that sex can be that casual. I tried it once, and it's not fun. Find someone and feel the sun. Who needs to sleep around? I've tried it. The sleepless nights were not required. Partners burned into my mind. It seems to be the saddest folk, and up the butt of every joke. But I'll move on. I'm getting better. I'm getting help and learning more, and I'll open every fucking door. I wish I never made mistakes. Then my love and life would be just great. But as a child, I was raped. It's no excuse for me to be rude, but I don't have issues with being nude. It made me think of sex as it's nothing special anyway. You can bet I'm not better now, but I'm making strides, and this song is how. I'm moving past it and I'm moving on. I'll clear my head and wash my hands. Sure, I'm fucked up, but I stand. I am no malicious man. If you want to Ken Bone, we can. Look up all my dirty secrets. But while you're there, take some time and see if I've done anything right. I was raised conservative, not open-minded. My favorite books are all debinded. You want rewards before the work is finished? Well, police need a finished sentence. Everyone's a filthy sinner. clean up well, then home for dinner. Hope to hell this one's a winner, because God has tried for 50 winters to open doors and unlock paths. I had hoped that there would be an aftermath. It's all to spray, what worlds to say. Take every day and make your play. Who happened to get on your ass? Finer girls, well, they won't last. Eventually you all will see her best days in the past. For 40 days and 40 nights, you fled my life but still won't fight. You said you tried to find the time, but all you found was sex and lies. Why should I try before I'm 30 to hold on to a girl so flirty? I'll tell you, my whole heart feels dirty. What kind of bitch can sew her stitch and think that I won't notice shit? I read your face. No time, not place, can take back what you've done to fate. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That's the whole deal. Thank you guys so much for coming. Special thanks for Nick Ramos for being so up to perform. He had very short notice, so I appreciate it. Thanks to these guys, and that's the end.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill this live feed so we can all
So we can talk about
do
people
illicit drugs.
again. Perfect.
Oh.